This is Our Stories, Life with an STD. Herpes could never. Herpes could never break me, could never again make me feel less of. Herpes can't take my sexy away from me. Herpes does not take my worth away. Herpes does not devalue me. Herpes can never. Welcome. My name is Shayna Singleton, aka the Herpes Goddess, and yes, having me is a big flex. I am the founder of Herpes Can Never Grow, and the largest herpes awareness platform of over 318K because I inspire people to love themselves more. The mission at Herpes Can Never is to be at war with the stigma until the herpes community feels comfortable being open about their status and proud of their sexuality. This is Our Stories, Life with an STD, and I'm super excited to introduce to you all the beautiful Sammy. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead and let everyone know who you are, Sammy.
Okay. Hi, guys. My name is Sammy. I'm 20 years old. I'm going into my junior year of college. My major is psychology. And I do social media on the side for fun. I'm not an influencer or anything, but I just really want to grow and see where my platform takes me.
Oh, I love that. 22 years old. I found out I had herpes at 25. So I think about myself at 22 years old, and I don't think my 22-year-old self can be out here on social media talking about herpes. That's one. So shout out to you for being so mentally advanced, because I wasn't there at your age.
Oh, thank you so much. You're so intelligent and you have like such a vibrant and welcoming soul. So it's hard for me to even believe that.
Thank you. It's a long time coming. I met myself in 2017 when I was 27 years old. And the person before that didn't know who I was, didn't love myself, very toxic person. So that's a compliment. Thank you.
I thought you were in your early 20s actually, but.
Oh, well, okay, no more gas. Okay. So, what type of herpes do you have?
I have HSV2.
HSV2.
So it's a strain of genital herpes.
Okay. So, do you have genital herpes? Because just because you have HSV2 doesn't mean you have genital herpes. I just want to throw that out.
Yeah, I got the full diagnosis. Yeah.
Okay. I have genital herpes too. The co-founder of Herpes Can Never, she has HSV2, but she's asymptomatic. So she can't really say she has genital herpes because she doesn't know where her outbreaks appear. There's some people in the community that have HSV2, but they have herpetic whitlow instead of genital herpes. Some people get it on their butts, their legs. So just to let y'all know out there, just because you have HSV2 doesn't necessarily mean the person has genital herpes.
Yeah, a lot of wrestlers get it too. Because I mean, it's a skin condition, so.
Skin to skin contact is very easy, like a ringworm, herpes virus. So how old were you when you found out you had genital herpes? Can you take us back to that moment? How were you feeling? What was the weight of the stigma? What made you go get tested? Let us know.
Yeah, so I'll give you guys some backstory about that and a little bit extra. Like I'll tell you the circumstances leading up to it, and then just a little bit about like the people who I was being intimate with. I'm not going to name any of their personal details, but just to like give you guys the full synopsis. So to make a long story short, when I was first diagnosed, I was 18 years old, and this was the summer before going into my freshman year of college. So that is when I had lost my virginity and had sex for the first time. So at that point, it was like two to three people who I had been intimate with. And so I decided to get on birth control and get tested. I was always using condoms, like my sexual health always came first. That was the most important thing. So I get tested. My doctor calls me. I was really tired at this time. So when my doctor calls me, I was literally about to fall asleep. So he's like, hey, can we talk for a second? I'm like, yeah, of course. He's like, hey, I just want to let you know all your results came back negative except for genital herpes. He said, it's only socially stigmatized. Like it's not going to have any detrimental effects on your health. He gave me a quick synopsis and like a little breakdown of what it entailed. And so initially I was like in a state of shock because I was like, I had done everything right. Like I had always used condoms. I got on the pill. And so initially the stigma was kind of like internal. And I was like, I'm not the type of person that this happens to. And like, what do you mean that this happened to me? Like, why me? And so I slept on it. I woke up, I called my best friend, I told her, and I told my cousin, the two people that were like the closest to me in my life at the time. And this is how I found out. And so what made me become public is I started doing more research. Like at first I was still in a state of shock and I was like, okay, what is the most Gen Z thing that I can do? So I went to all of my social media platforms and I was like, hey, everybody, I just want to inform you guys that I have genital herpes and that it's socially stigmatized. It's not detrimental to your health. And I got like a plethora of questions. I got the most like invasive questions, like, how did you get it? What ethnicity was the person who gave it to you? Like, were they white? Like, when did this happen? How does this happen? How do you get genital herpes? Like, can you still have sex? Do you use condoms? Like, what's your sex life like now? And so I had a culmination of questions and I was like, all these people are like bombarding me. Yeah. So when I went to my freshman year of college, I decided to start a radio show and talk about hookup culture on college campuses and like how it's affecting me and like the casual sex that I'm having as a college student and like how having a socially stigmatized STD like holds weight on it. And what was so interesting for me is it didn't affect my sex life in the way that I would have thought, because I wasn't in a committed relationship and I was still like having casual sex and hooking up and still just having my like college experience. And what pushed me to make that leap was I got into an argument with my cousin and she was like, hey, like, screw you, da 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 da. And it was really heated. And she was like, I'm going to tell everybody that you have genital herpes. Like, everybody would expect that from you. And so I was like, I'm not going to ever give somebody that power and weight over my life. So I decided to like be like, hey, why do you even feel like that's something that you should use against me? And so I started doing more research. I found a lot of like authors and stuff. I found like Ella Dawson. I don't know if you've heard of her.
Yes.
Yeah. And I was in contact with her. And so I just started my radio show and then I started a podcast once quarantine hit and we all had to leave.
Oh, I love that.
Thank you.
That. One thing you mentioned is how the stigma is internalized.
Yes.
And I have someone like book a coaching call. I always bring up the scenario, like you find out you have herpes. The only two people that know is the person telling you and you, and yet you feel the weight of the stigma. Yeah. Why? It's because it's you. You're the one who have stigmatized herpes beforehand. And now you're in a place where you just found out you have herpes and now you're stigmatizing yourself. So when you decide to walk out into the world, subconsciously, you're going to be looking for everything that proves you right. Because humans, we love to be right, and our subconscious loves to work for us. So if immediately I'm putting the stigma on myself and I'm going out to the world, the stigma is going to become my reality because that's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm expecting. And that's the energy I'm putting out into the universe. So I love that you brought that up. Two, you mentioned having the normal college experience. And how was that for you as far as disclosure? Were you disclosing? Was that a thing for you yet?
It's so interesting because it happened in a culmination of ways. Like, for instance, like the day, okay, so this like all took place the first day we got there. So literally we did our freshman orientation. I met this girl. We instantly stuck together like glue. We're at this frat party. We're just sitting there. She's like saying something so simple as like, oh, can I borrow your lip gloss? I'm like, yeah, sure. She's like, oh, I don't have herpes. And I'm like, wait, like I actually have genital herpes. And every single time someone would mention that, like, and I remember being at another frat party and I'm sitting on this guy's bed. He offers me some water. I'm like, yeah, sure. He's like, oh, you can drink out of this. I don't have herpes. And I'm like, wait, I actually have genital herpes. And he was the guy who actually wanted to hook up with me and who liked me. Mm-hmm. But I just always take that as a moment to just educate people. So I was out, like if you were in my friend group or if you knew me, it came up in casual conversation. Also, I was known as the girl with like the radio show and I was like pretty controversial because like I was very outspoken. I think that that's kind of always something that's gotten me in trouble because I'm very like true to myself. But yeah, and basically how I went about that. And I remember this story, like if there's no tomorrow. So I was at my first frat party. This was like freshman year. This is the day we all got there. And I meet this really cute guy and we're like dancing, talking, and we're like, oh, like, let's go hook up. And I was like, wait, I have genital herpes. And so he's like, oh, I have herpes on my lip. He's like, oh, I get that cold sore like every year. And I was like, oh, wow, like that's crazy. Nobody batted an eye. Like, and when I was so open and comfortable, like they really like took my lead and followed me. Like guys haven't felt less attracted to me. Like I haven't been less of a sexual being. Like nobody has reducted their attraction for me, you know, since I've been out. I mean, it's happened like 1 or 2 times, but
one thing I notice with males a lot is they give me the wow, thank you for being honest. Like,
Yes, or you're
that,
such an angel. Thank you for being so sweet. I'm like,
yeah.
that's basic human decency to tell someone you have an STD, but okay.
I actually had someone tell me, I just love that. Thank you for telling me that. Like, to think I was gonna have sex with you anyway, and you get. I'm like, okay, now I got the red flag. You got the red flag now, because if you was gonna have sex with me anyway, were we ever gonna have this conversation? Were we ever going to talk about STDs? Were we
Yeah.
ever going to talk about our status? Do you even care about my status? And do you talk about this with your partners before me? So when I get the, wow, I can trust you. Thank you for being real. Thank you for being honest. But then I also, the alarm in the back of my head goes off, kind of like, were you going to bring this up? Were you going to address this? I feel like there's this responsibility placed on people living with STDs that should be placed on everyone. Like, we have the STD contraction laws. If we don't disclose, we can get in trouble. Someone with HIV can have something, can be charged with a felony. Someone with herpes can be charged with a misdemeanor. Laws vary depending on the state that you live in. And I feel like these laws are unfair, because we should all have that discussion before having sex, before having unprotected sex. That responsibility should be placed on a person who doesn't know their status, as well as a person who does know their status. I'm going to be working on abolishing those laws.
A lot of people won't test for genital herpes unless you have a herpetic outbreak. They're just like, there's no need to test for it, because if you know it's detrimental to your mental health and your well-being, like, it's just a social stigma. They know it's not going to affect your health, which I think is like disgusting. I think that it's really sick, and it's also expensive to test for it, so they don't even bother.
And the blood tests are the only ways they can test for it if you're not showing any symptoms. And because the blood tests are so inaccurate, the CDC recommends against testing for herpes on your average standard STD panel.
Yes.
They wait for you to have symptoms, because that's the most accurate test. They can actually test for the virus. But when they test through your blood, they're testing for antibodies. Some people are IgG deficient, so they're going to test negative all the time. There's been a point in my life where I was able to put my virus to sleep for over 1.5 years. During that time, I was able to test negative on the blood test. So that's probably why they don't push for the blood test as we think that they should.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. We're working on change. But before we go too much off topic, what advice would you give to someone who just found out they had herpes, someone your age, or someone who's been struggling with the virus for years and can't seem to get over that hump?
Well, if somebody, number one, to start off with somebody who's like freshly diagnosed, basically, I want you to know that it's not the end of your sex life. Like, it's not the end of casual sex. It's not the end of like your sexual liberation. You can still be a fully fledged, like, multi-dimensional human being. Like, herpes doesn't take away anything about you. I know that it makes you feel like, I know an initial diagnosis can make you feel really worthless and really internalize a lot of self-hatred. But I want you to know that all of that is due to the social stigma surrounding sex. Like, if we lived in a more sex positive society, that STD disclosure would be no big deal. Like, it would be like, oh, I have a cold. You know what I mean? So by you being out and open, and even if you don't feel comfortable with that, just disclosing it to the people you're being intimate with, is going to make such a big difference. And you know what? Over half the population has it. Like, it's such a common thing, but nobody talks about it. That's why I was like, I need to, because I was like, I'm going into college. Like, I can't be the only one. And I've had so many people reach out to me, and I've gotten like so many messages of people being like, I thought my life was over. Like, can you please help me? You know what I mean? Like, coming to you in distrust and like panic. For people who are already diagnosed and who feel like they don't have a life to live, or feel like, oh my gosh, like, I have no more self-worth, I would say to do as much research as you can, because like, again, there's not a cure for genital herpes, so it's something that can be managed. It's something that's not a death sentence. And we have resources now. Like, we have communities of people who are out and open and positive who will teach you how to disclose that you have herpes. And so it's not the end of the world.
Wow. It was a pleasure speaking with you today. For all of you that want to see her content, get in contact with her, I will make sure I put her information in the description box below. I want to end off with just telling you, you're beautiful. Your spirit is amazing. I am inspired by you, your 22-year-old self, to just be.
Oh, I'm 20.
Here we go. Your 20-year-old self. That is even more, okay? Because it took you, what, 2 years? Maybe.
Yeah, I just turned 20.
Okay. Maybe
last month I just turned 20.
To be your authentic self. It took me 27 years to learn how to be my authentic self. So that within its own is an inspiration. Thank you for showing up for the community, and showing up for little girls that look like us. Because when I was younger, we didn't have enough women out there that look like us that I can look at. So that's big. For everyone watching, my name is the Herpes Goddess, aka Shayna Singleton. I have a ton of resources if you're struggling with herpes. I'm also going to put my link in the bio. And I just want to remind you all that herpes could never.
Exactly. Period.